I was started recording, so I think we are going to start. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our panel webinar, where we will be talking about bioscience, technology, and public policy, um, master's program and the PhD program offered at the University of Winnipeg. So I am so excited to be here with a panel of scientists who will provide you some excellent information going into these programs. Before we go into the presentation and the panel discussion, I would like to introduce the panel to you. So I'm going to ask Dr. Craig Willis to start and introduce yourselves and the other panelists after.
Hi, everybody. I'm Craig Willis from the Department of Biology at the University of Winnipeg. I chair our graduate program, and I'm really excited that everyone's here. I'm a wildlife biologist. I work on endangered small animals, most of the time, almost all the time, bats of all things, which are amazingly cool. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about the program today.
I'm going to now introduce you to Dr. Sanoji Wijenayake, who's also a professor and researcher of the bioscience program.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sanoji Wijenayake, and I am an assistant professor. I'm an early career researcher, so this has been my third year of being a professor and a principal investigator. So I'm a neuroscientist and a cell and molecular biologist. I study how early life exposures and stresses shape later life outcomes. So I look at developmental pathways, inflammatory responses, disease outcomes in babies from early life and on through later life.
Thank you, Sanoji. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Alison Menzies, or Ali. She's also alumna of the MSc Bioscience program, so we're really excited to have you in the panel today.
Thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about the year I graduated, and it was a decade ago that I finished my master's, so an old alumnus, but I'm now a professor at the University of Calgary as of March, and I'm excited to be here to share about my experience at U of W.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ali. And really, really excited to have Haley Langford, who's a current student. So most of you are probably excited to hear from her. Haley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I am a graduate student in Dr. Anurag Srivastav's lab as a part of the bioscience program. I actually also completed my bachelor's degree in biochemistry here at the University of Winnipeg, so I'm really fortunate to be able to continue my education here. Right now, my current project focuses on developing a blood test for the early detection of colorectal cancer. And early diagnosis is so important in improving patient outcomes, and I'm really excited to be here and share my experience in this program.
Thank you, Haley, and thanks again, panelists. I am just going to share my presentation. I hope everyone can see it. If not, just let me know. So just a reminder, again, the event format, we have a little bit of a presentation, then we have a panel discussion, and then we will answer your questions. So if you have any questions for any of the panelists, please add that to the Q&A. You met all these wonderful people already. And I want to give a brief introduction about the University of Winnipeg Graduate Studies. We offer both graduate professional programs and research programs in art, science, and environmental studies. And some of the great things about the Faculty of Grad Studies at the universities, we do offer innovative and multidisciplinary programs, which you will hear about two of those programs today. And our classes or cohorts are small and specialized, so usually around 15 students. That makes it really easy and great for you to make those connections with your professor, your research supervisor, or your peers.
Mekala, I'm just going to jump in. I think your sound is faded out on us a bit.
Oh.
Can't hear you very well.
How is now?
Still pretty quiet. It was perfect before, and then I'm not sure what happened. That's better.
Okay, I will try to talk louder. Thank you for that, Craig. So innovative and multidisciplinary programs, small and specialized cohorts, award-winning and professors and world-class researchers, which you will meet two of them today. We have excellent funding opportunities, especially for our graduate students, and exceptional employment rates for graduate students, usually above 90% for most of our graduate programs. So really briefly, the list of our graduate programs here, we have Master of Science programs in Applied Computer Science and Society, the Bioscience program we are talking today, and Environmental and Social Change. We have a Master of Arts and Master of Environment streams also in the Environmental and Social Change programs. Our Master of Arts programs are Applied Economics, Criminal Justice, Cultural Studies, and Indigenous Governance. We do have professional programs in Master in Development Practice, Indigenous Development, Master in Management, and Master of Marriage and Family Therapy. Jointly offered with University of Manitoba, we have 3 Master of Arts programs in History, Religion, and Peace and Conflict Studies, and Master of Public Administration is another professional master's program. Drum roll, please. We are going to be talking about the newest graduate program at the University of Winnipeg today. So I have a video that Craig's explaining about the program. I'm not going to play it because he's here joining us at the event. So I'm going to let him talk about this this program. I am going to stop share now and hand over the presentation to Craig.
Okay, does that look right to everybody there?
Yes.
Good. Awesome. Yeah, thank goodness we're off that previous slide of my big goofy looking face. But yeah, please check out these slides we posted later, and there's some links in them so you can click them afterwards. As I mentioned, I chair the bioscience grad programs. So our master's in bioscience, technology, and public policy, and our PhD in bioscience and policy. We're incredibly excited that the PhD program is now approved. We've been working on it and perfecting it for years now, and we're really excited it's getting going. Few reasons to pursue grad school, and I think all of the folks that are here on the Zoom are interested in pursuing grad school, and hopefully we can convince you that there are great reasons to pursue it here in our programs, right? So grad school after an undergrad that's exposed you to all sorts of different courses and material and concepts is a chance to specialize. So you can really become an expert, a master, in a particular discipline that interests you. And so you are really doing sort of high-level training, and we'll talk a bit more about that. Your career potential can really be enhanced by graduate school. So we know that master's and PhD graduates, they make more money. Money isn't everything, but it is obviously important. And so if you pursue grad school, often you end up getting to work in an area that you're really interested in and passionate about and make more money doing it, which is obviously a beneficial thing. For many students, a master's program is a pathway to a PhD. And so we'll hear from certainly one of our panelists today who's taken that route from our master's program and been incredibly successful afterwards. And so often it's not a requirement necessarily for PhD programs everywhere, but often a master's can give you a chance to really run your own project, run your own kind of operation, get that kind of project management experience that really sets you up for doing a great job as a PhD student later and a researcher. One of the things that's always a challenge, of course, in any research field and in graduate studies is funding. And we'll talk a bit about some of the funding opportunities that we have for students in our programs that allow you to go to school and also survive at the same time. So Our programs do some things that really graduate programs all over the place do, but we also do some extra things that we think provide really beneficial experience for students. So step one, and this is kind of every graduate program everywhere that's a research intensive program, basically you want to get some hands-on training, hands-on experience. As Mekala mentioned, we've got outstanding faculty members here who can really help you get some world-class experience in a particular area of bioscience research. The things we do that are a little sort of more value added relative to the vast majority of graduate programs are where the policy comes in and where trying to sort of make your research, teach you how to make your research have the biggest impact, the biggest benefit for society that it can. And so we do some specific things to help our students learn to connect their research with policy development, with policy recommendations, and sort of craft those recommendations so they can sort of get the most bang for our buck in terms of their benefits for the world. A big part of that is communication. So we've got to be able to talk to other scientists, but we also have to be able to talk to non-scientists, and that can range from students in a sort of grade school classroom all the way up to politicians and policymakers and people working in government. The message, the way you communicate your message, has to change for those different audiences, and that's one of the things we try and help our students learn to do. So for step one, this world-class research training really comes from your master's thesis or your PhD thesis, where you're working closely in the laboratory, in the research group of a faculty supervisor on a project that fits within their sort of larger research program. And as our sort of panelists already hinted at, all of us work in really different areas. And that's, I think, a real strength of the bioscience program because our students all go to each other's seminars. They all actually help each other work on the seminars that they give. We learn about, or our students all learn about everybody else's research. And so you get experience sort of hearing about everything from wildlife conservation to evolutionary genomics. Haley talked about studying cancer. Dr. Wijenayake talked about studying the amazing sort of attributes of early life development. We've got folks working on fisheries, folks working in microbiology, folks working as we do on bats, geneticists. The whole breadth of bioscience is covered really nicely in our program. Most of our supervisors are in the biology department, but many of them are in other departments, and we'll point to a list of potential supervisors later on. Okay, so that's step one. That's the world-class research training, hands-on training. That's your thesis. Step two and three, we really try and tackle with some targeted coursework. In our master's program, we've got 3 required courses that everybody does. There's a seminars course that master's students take for 2 years. This is where everyone sort of works as a team to help improve everybody's communication skills. The thesis, we call this a course, but this is really working with your supervisor. Everyone also takes a Bioscience and Policy course. So this is a 1-term course where you learn how sort of science policy works and how science can be sort of leveraged or harnessed to develop policy and improve policy out in the world, right? We also have our students take a couple more courses, sort of 3 credits from a choice of several courses. We have some core bioscience courses, and we have some core technology courses. Bioscience courses are more or less designed to help you gain conceptual expertise, understand the theory behind the kind of bioscience work that you're doing. And our technology courses are more geared to additional hands-on training, right? These aren't the only options. These are sort of sample of options. There are a range of other potential bioscience courses and policy courses that folks can take. The PhD program design is actually very similar. If we can get there, we have a seminars course. that is sort of a team course, also with the master's students in this course. Our PhD students are going to do some extra things, and maybe we'll talk about that if folks are interested later on. Obviously, our PhD students are doing a thesis as well. They also will be doing a comprehensive candidacy exam. So that's a two-part process. Again, if folks have questions, maybe I'll save that for the end because we want to hear from our other panelists. And then the Bioscience and Policy course is required for incoming students that haven't done their master's here at the University of Winnipeg. If you've already taken this course, we find another option for you to take. Okay, then there are other options out there. Same goes for these other courses. Our PhD students are also going to take a couple more courses, but if you've taken one from the list that, and you've done a master's here already, if you've already taken one, you obviously can't retake it. We have you take something else, or we find another option that works in your schedule and works with what your supervisor kind of recommends. So that's the sort of nuts and bolts of the program. Where do our students end up? Well, as Mekala mentioned, we've got really good success rates in terms of our students ending up in careers that they really want to end up in. We've got, government biologists working at Department of Fisheries and Oceans. In Winnipeg, we are lucky to have an amazing facility, the National Microbiology Lab, which houses the only biosafety level 4 lab in Canada, and is a really important resource for infectious disease research in humans and animals. And so some of our folks end up there. Some of our folks end up as environmental consultants. One of our panelists might recognize part of her CV on this list here. So some go on to do PhD and postdoc and become faculty members. We'll hear from Dr. Menzies in a minute. Another one of our former students, Dr. Quinn Weber, is now faculty member at Guelph. Some of our students have gone on to become professors at a bunch of different universities in Canada and overseas. So folks tend to end up getting to pursue the careers they want. We do have to charge some tuition fees. We'll do a quick rundown of those fees, but a link to where you can find fee information will be on the grad studies page. Domestic fees amount to about $2,900 per term. That's sort of averaged out over the year. They'll charge you a little more in the first 2 terms and a little less later. Our part-time fees are all basically cut in half from our full-time fees for part-time students. International students, because international students aren't paying tax, and university in Canada is partly funded by provincial taxpayers and the provincial tax base. International students have to pay a little bit more, or quite a bit more, amounts to about $6,000 per term. In both our master's program and our PhD program, you'll pay these fees for 2 years, and then you get a free term where you don't have to pay anything. For our master's students, that's when you're meant to be finishing up your thesis. So we call that the thesis writing term. For our PhD students, that we're going to call the post-candidacy term. And so basically you get a break from tuition for 1 term. And then if you need more time after that, and PhD students definitely will need more time after 2 years, most PhD students will take 4. Then you simply pay continuance fees, which are quite a lot less expensive than full tuition and fees. Okay. Now, to help our students cover those costs, those tuition costs, in addition to the costs of being a human in society, paying rent and buying food, we provide funding. So all of our students receive some funding from both our program and their supervisor, and from teaching assistantships. And there are also a whole range of scholarships available, and there's lots more information about those on the grad studies page. Plenty of money given out in scholarships and bursaries each year, as you can see from this chatty piggy bank. So if you're interested in applying, the first step is to find a supervisor. Could be from the biology department, or could be from a range of other departments across campus. We have supervisors from environmental studies, from geography, chemistry, physics, anthropology, psychology, kinesiology, and applied health. that can supervise students in our programs. We've got a list of sort of our current and recent supervisors available up on the grad studies page now with links to their respective websites and a bit about them. That's the first step. You need to contact one of those folks or a few of those folks if there are multiple folks working in an area that interests you, and introduce yourself. And maybe we talk a bit later about sort of my suggestion for how to make that introduction. It's important to confirm that they have space for you in their lab, they have a project for you to do, and that they have funding to help support you, both some of your stipend cost and your research costs, the costs of doing your project. Okay. Once you've kind of nailed down that situation with a potential supervisor, then you can check the entrance qualifications and requirements and apply online. And there's a link here to do that. You can get off the slides a bit later. In terms of our entry requirements for master's students, you need to have a 4-year undergraduate degree in a relevant field. Usually that's biology, but it's not always necessarily biology. One thing that is important, though, is that you have taken courses that would allow you to help teach in our first-year biology program, because most of our students get some experience teaching in first-year biology as lab instructors. Okay, you need to have a B or higher average. You need to meet the English language requirements. You don't need to have completed one of the standardized tests that many American institutions require to get into grad school. So those aren't necessary. And eventually, along with your application, you'll need a range of supporting documents, transcripts, and proof of your degree, your English language test scores, if English wasn't the language of instruction and isn't your first language, or you got your undergrad degree. You'll need to provide some details of your background and a research proposal and a couple of reference letters. Similar requirements for PhD students, except you need to have completed a Master of Science degree or equivalent in a relevant program, and again, a B or higher average. There will be an option for master's students, currently enrolled master's students that are doing really, really well after their first year, knocking it out of the park, basically, to transfer into a PhD after their first year. Okay, that will be for really outstanding students that are really performing well. And so that's the way to get into the PhD program, excuse me, if you haven't completed your master's. And I'm seeing some stuff in the, Mekala's posted some stuff in the chat. I don't have the chat window open, but that's great. So just a timeline of the application process. Applications are open now. Master's applications have been open for a while. We're really excited that we now just, sort of a week ago have PhD applications open. So folks that already have a master's can apply for a PhD. The closing date or the deadline to submit applications is the 1st of February. That deadline isn't really a hard deadline. It's important to get your application in by that date to be competitive for some of the internal funding that we can provide. If you miss that date, it starts to become trickier to get you funding, which means your supervisor will need to pay a whole lot more money. And that can make it difficult for the supervisor to take you on in the end. So important to try and hit that deadline and to work with your prospective supervisor on trying to make that deadline. And then we send offer letters out from sort of January. We usually wait until after February 1st, but sometime before April, you should have a letter of offer. And almost all of our students start in September. We're not really allowing students to start in January. Occasionally, we allow students to start in May if a supervisor has a funding arrangement that requires that. But typically, all our students start in September. And we find that's really useful for sort of building a cohort of students that all start their seminars course at the same time, all are getting their feet wet at the same time, and really get to know each other and hang out and help each other out. Okay. Okay, and I think that's all I wanted to cover. As I mentioned, the links will be up here, and this video will be posted later too. So you can check out some of the links to various things. And yeah, and I think we want to sort of open it up to more of a discussion at this point. I guess maybe why don't we ask if there are specific questions about the nuts and bolts of the program first, and then we've got some panel questions that I think we're going to sort of walk through.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Craig. We actually have one question about the requirement. So they're asking if they need an honors degree or just a 4-year degree would be sufficient.
An honors degree isn't necessarily required. A 4-year undergraduate degree is required. For many supervisors, though, they like to see that a student's completed an honors project and has a bit of research experience, but it's certainly not a sort of definitive requirement.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I don't have any other questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
Feel free to add your questions right now, but we do have some questions that come to us regularly. So my first question is to Craig. You just spoke about the requirements, application requirements for the programs. The question is, other than those educational qualifications you talk about, what are the other qualities you expect from candidates or that would help the candidates succeed in the programs?
I think yes, great grades and a strong transcript is a huge help because it makes you more competitive for scholarship funding. When prospective students contact me, I like to see that. I like to see that they've done a little homework on the kind of work that my students and I do. So, and that they have some evidence of a little bit of experience, at least that's sort of relevant. For many undergrad students, that might not be the case necessarily. But certainly for someone that's interested in a PhD, they should have some experience that's relevant to what we do. The other thing I really like to see is someone who's got a sort of well-rounded experience. So maybe some volunteer experience out in the community, maybe some athletics experience or club experience, those kinds of things. I think people that have worked hard at both learning how to be a scientist and learning how to do other things often are served really well and can do a great job when they get to grad school.
Thank you. Sanoji, would you like to add anything from your end too?
Sure. I think Craig covered quite a bit of the sort of the initial things that we all look for. Great GPAs is amazing to have. One thing I look for in transcripts is, have you taken those core biology courses in whatever degree that you've taken, right? So if you're coming to my lab, for example, or you're applying to come into my lab, we do a lot of cell and molecular biology techniques. It requires you to have certain level of foundational knowledge. So have you taken those biochemistry courses, right? Have you taken cell bio? Have you taken organic chemistry, right? So I look for those kinds of requirements just so that I know that when the student comes in, they have sort of the knowledge of the program, and then I can sort of, teach the techniques. I can teach you how to do research part of it. Another really important thing I look for in my students or my prospective students is sort of attitude or perspective for doing graduate studies, right? So do you have a good attitude coming into it? Are you willing to work hard? And is this something you're passionate about, right? Because with graduate school, we are trying to train the next generation of scientists or clinicians, whomever it might be. We want you to be a little bit more independent when you come into grad school, which is different from undergraduate, right? Undergraduate, you have fixed schedules, you go to classes, you do tests. But this is much more, autonomous. You have to be able to, plan out your experiments. You have to show up on time. You have to, actually do what you're proposing to do. So those kinds of things I do look for in students as well. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to have done everything. You just have to have the right attitude going into your next step.
Thank you. Ali, would you like to add as someone who's kind of bridging being a grad student to a professor now, on that same question?
Yeah, I think some of what I was going to say, Craig and Sanoji already touched on. I think curiosity and passion and interest is really important. I think that's something that really changed for me between my undergrad and grad school was I was choosing now what to study, what to pursue, and it occupied all of my time for 12 years. After undergrad, it is less varied than what an undergraduate degree would be. And so making sure that it's a topic that you are interested in and can think about really in depth for years. And in contacting someone, as was mentioned already, make sure that you make it clear what you're interested in and why that might resonate with the potential supervisor. It's hard to assess some of the things that I think are really important because I think a lot of them have to do with someone's own personality or outlook and less of what is written down on a CV. But I think someone who has a desire for self-growth and asking questions and professional development, there's a lot of things that you have to learn through grad school that no one is going to teach you. And I think just being interested in improving your skills and yourself and maybe even society with the research you're doing, I think that's really important and something that I try to look for or something that I felt like I was interested in as a student.
Great insight. Thank you so much. I'm coming to you, Haley, now, as someone who just finished the first year, or you are still in the first year. What do you bring? What things that help you?
I think so because my research is more is clinical. I think I keep patients in mind. I was lucky enough to, before I started my master's, I worked in an endoscopy clinic here in Winnipeg. So I was collecting all of the samples that I am now using in the lab, but I was able to interact with a lot of patients, and that was really motivating. The thing is sometimes you end up doing the same thing every single day, and it can get very it can become a routine, and I feel like you can lose track of the larger scope of your projects. I think it's really important to always keep that in mind. So on that note, if you are still have a couple years left in your undergrad, I feel like it'd be so important to reach out to any supervisor whose research you're interested in and try to get into their lab, volunteer, and get all that experience so that you can apply that to your master's. And it looks great on an application, on a CV.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going to ask my next question from you, Haley, too. You mentioned about your mentor, your supervisor earlier, Dr. Anurag Srivastava. So I want to ask you, who are your mentors and what kind of support you receive from them, and how did they help?
Absolutely. I feel like I owe so much to the previous graduate students in my lab and even the current ones. They've really helped me develop my skills and have been a constant source of encouragement, but also other fellow graduate students. They've played a huge role in my success, I feel. Whether I'm stuck on an experiment or just need someone to vent to, there's always somebody ready to listen. But also my supervisor and the faculty in our department are just incredibly supportive. They're so approachable and willing to offer guidance, which makes a big difference, especially when you run into challenges in your master's, you get stuck. There's always somebody to help you and lend a helping hand.
That's so wonderful to hear. Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to go back to Ali. You mentioned you finished your master's or undergrad a few years ago. Could you talk to us about the support you received from the university and how did that help in your journey?
Yeah. Yeah, I owe a lot of my success to my time at the University of Winnipeg, honestly. I think I was given opportunities that maybe I wouldn't have gotten at larger institutions, at different institutions. There were people that helped me figure out how to even start doing research. I didn't know what research was. I didn't know what grad school was, and there was professors and other students who made that a bit more clear to me, that it could be a job, that it was something I could do. And then once my foot was in the door, there was a lot of people who just cheered me on and made me feel welcome and valued and like I had a place in the world of research. And that was professors at the university, including Craig, who was my supervisor, other students, as Haley said, even admin. Shout out to Pam, who was our biology admin, who everyone just made me feel like I could do what I wanted to do. And I think I am someone who really values community, and I really found it at the University of Winnipeg. But as Craig talked about a bit in his presentation, the skills that I learned and that I learned were valuable have stayed with me until now. Things like communication and getting research into the world and sharing knowledge with all of society. And U of W is a little bit uniquely placed in that it's not separated from society. It's surrounded by realistic elements of society. And I think that helped me really place what we were doing in the bigger picture. It's not really an ivory tower, even though it is. And there are people and experiences that I had there that continue to benefit me and support me to this day. I don't think I would have even jumped into the research world had I not been at a university where I could easily talk to professors and easily get the support I needed, and felt like I had a whole department behind me. And I think that was really beneficial as I was getting my feet under me as a researcher and as a student. I then was lucky enough to go on to larger institutions, but I think the foundational experiences at U of W were really important to give me the confidence and support in order to do that and to succeed. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you for sharing that. This leads me to a question to our two supervisors. We know that the bond the supervisors and the student creates is really important because it's a long time working very closely. How do you support your students? Who wants to go first?
Craig, you want to do it? Should I go first?
You go first, Sanoji. I did last time.
Okay. So in terms of how I support my students, I always tell people coming into my lab at the beginning, if you want a supervisor who's not present in your life on a daily basis, this is not the lab for you. Because I am literally on top of my students every day, day in, day out. I see them every single day. I am checking with them on their experiments, their personal life, their psychological health on a daily basis. And it's very important to me. And I work very, very closely with my students in terms of their grant applications, and scholarships and things like that. And it's very important to teach that part of research as well. It's not just lab and at bench that we do, right? Part of being an academic is that you have to apply for funding. You have to publish your research. You have to learn how to write. Scientific writing is not regular English writing, right? So those are things that takes quite a bit of time and training to get or perfect. So I work very, very closely with my students on all those things. And I'm very happy to say that 100% of my students, grad students, have received a competitive scholarship for their grad studies. And I think that just comes from the fact that, I very closely work with them on their applications. And I have a Slack group for my lab. So again, you send me a message at 12 a.m. I will message back at 12:01. I'm crazy like that, but I'm always very present and I'm always very available, maybe too available to my students.
Thank you. Craig, would you like to add to that?
Sure, and that's I mean that's all amazing stuff, and I agree with a whole lot of that. I think I have a little different style. I'm more hands off, and that's one of the things that you find with different supervisors, and that's as you're approaching supervisors, that's a great question to ask. What's your sort of style as a supervisor when you're sort of contacting a potential supervisor in the first place? I don't like to think of it really as a formal interview, but you want to make sure there's a good fit for you with them as they want to make sure that you're a good fit for their group and for them as well. So I would say I'm less hands-on, less involved than Sanoji, but I'm as involved as students want me to be. So if folks need more help, I adjust my style. I kind of tend not to chase people and let folks work independently and ask me for help when they need it. After we've gotten through the initial, like, how do you do the basics after a few months and maybe after a couple weeks of field work, my students are mostly working on their own and with each other. And then we check in when they need. That can be every few days or once a week or less often if the students are doing okay and don't need help. So that's a big one. Writing is a huge one in communication, and we really spend a lot of time working together on, as Sanoji said, scholarship applications, grant applications. And I think many of the students in our program have great success in those kinds of things because their supervisors are helping, are sort of working with them to craft those important aspects of what we do. And I think, I feel like the student supervisor relationship, as you're moving through, it becomes less supervisor and more colleague to colleague relationship, sort of as you get closer to the end. And I would say Ali and I are now friends and colleagues. And to me, that is like one of the joys of my life, seeing folks go off and be successful and then getting to hang out with them and maybe work together, and then we're pals. And to me, that success means everything. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Craig. This segue into a question to Ali, actually. I think you touched on this a little bit before, but I want to ask you, now that you are in your academic career as a professor, how did your master's program at UWinnipeg help you on the career path?
Yeah, I guess just all of the things that Craig, Sanoji, and Haley have said about what they do for their students, what they've done at UW, I think really resonates and has helped me. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly what has made me successful, but I think it's just a combination of support and mentorship as well as skill building. And I got a lot of that. And I think, again, the communication, whether it's written communication, presentations, speaking to the public, all of that, I think has really helped me as my job has grown into a bit of advocacy, a lot of grant writing, a lot of trying to convince people that the work I do is important. But I think also, again, coming back to community and the strong community that I felt I had at the University of Winnipeg, that was really broad in terms of research scope and diverse, really made me seek that out and now make me want to create that in my own role as a supervisor now. And I think that community partnership, collaboration is extremely important to research success now. And I think a lot of my success has come from that. And I think learning how to do those things and how to communicate well with people really helped me as I move forward. And I'm actually still in touch with the individual who taught me my environmental policy course in my master's, Bill, and things like that you can't even begin to know how that's going to benefit you. I work a little bit more at the science policy junction now, and I think back to the class that I took 11 or 12 years ago and things that I learned there that I didn't really know I would need. So I think there's a lot of thought put into the program that people may not realize as to what skills are being taught and why. And those have helped me. It broadened my exposure and broadened my skill set in ways that I didn't really know I needed at the time. And yeah, learning about cancer research and early life stage effects and all of these things that at the time I didn't know that would be beneficial to me, but it just really broadened my understanding of science and communicating to a diverse audience and things like that. Yeah.
Mekala, I might just jump in. I don't want to change the subject too much, but there's a few questions in the Q&A that I thought we should maybe touch on so we don't run out of time.
Right, yeah, we are at 12:47 now. So I do have a couple of questions for the panelists, but I will look
Well,
at
I think I can address these pretty quickly. So
sure, go ahead.
we got 3 questions in the Q&A from folks with pretty specific questions about their particular backgrounds and experience and whether they would be eligible for the program. I would certainly advise all those folks to get in touch with a potential supervisor and talk that out with them. They'll be able to give you some good advice about whether they think your background is going to set you up for success. If you decide to put in an application and a supervisor has agreed to supervise you, our committee reviews the applications when students apply. And occasionally we need a student to do a qualifying year to get their basic coursework up to a level where they can sort of participate fully in a bioscience program. That could be the case. It might not be the case. Usually your supervisor can talk with other folks in the department to get a sense of that based on your transcript when you're talking with them. So I'd urge all those folks to have those conversations with prospective supervisors.
Great, thank you for addressing both the new questions, Craig. The question I had is kind of last couple of questions. One is for Haley. Haley, you are a current student. You talk a little bit about what you're doing in the lab, in the classroom, but could you speak to kind of holistic experience of a graduate student? What helps, what's challenging? Anything you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll start with what's challenging. So kind of what was already mentioned is that you're working on your own. So it is kind of a little, on your own kind of schedule. So working that in and figuring it out is a little bit more tricky. I found it was easier when I had strict deadlines in my undergrad. Not saying that you don't also have strict deadlines in your master's, but getting there is you have a lot more freedom. So you definitely have to plan out your days. And I mean, the best thing I've found and have been taught too is that have a schedule, plan daily what you have to do and get done. The same goes for learning the theory behind your research too. That's also so important that you fully understand everything that you're doing. If you're doing lab work, it's understanding what you're using, every solution. Why are you doing this? What is that contributing to this experiment? And that can also be a lot of extra work on top of your lab work. So that can become challenging. So I'm learning to manage all of that along with your extracurricular activities. But otherwise, I feel that all I can say are positive things about the university and the program, because it's such a great environment, which all things that I've already mentioned is that it's so supportive, and everyone there is there to help you. And kind of what Dr. Willis said is, it, and this was kind of shocking to me when I started my master's, is that it almost seems like you're more friends or colleagues with the faculty at this point. And it's just amazing to help you grow as a person, as a scientist, in your education. And then the extra, like the courses in this program, so the policy, where you get to learn how your research relates to the real world and what it can bring outside of the lab, which is very cool and very important to have, and especially for your future when you're getting new jobs. And then also just the broad range of things that you learn. So from like molecular biology, things you can't really see, all the way to environmental biology. As someone who doesn't necessarily have much of a background in environmental biology, it is really cool for me to learn all of these new things and kind of become a part of that side of biology as well.
Great, thank you very much. So we are kind of coming to the end of our webinar, but I do have some questions. I would like to ask this question from Haley and Ali first. So this is the application period. As Craig mentioned, we are taking applications for the fall 2025 term for both master's and PhD programs. And if anyone's going to be applying for the next intake, as someone who's recently maybe applied for these programs, what would be your advice to get that application successful? Haley, would you like to continue and then?
Sure. I think so. Reach out to your supervisor or the supervisors who you would like to work with, and they can definitely give you some great advice on what to include in your application. Speak about your extracurriculars, your volunteer work, your expertise, like what you know and how this can contribute to the field that you're hoping to go into. And yeah, just starting building those relationships with your supervisor and maybe other faculty at the University of Winnipeg would, of course, be super helpful.
Great, thank you. Ali, would you like to add?
Yeah, I will reiterate the reaching out to someone and making sure that what you want to do aligns with what they do. And I think that's my number one piece of advice to anyone anywhere interested in grad school, is to find the right mentor. That will make or break your experience, from what I have seen. And it's someone who could be doing the research that you really want to do, but it's also someone who could have the same values as you or possess the skill set you want to learn. But I think to put some thought into who you want to work with and what they do and where they can bring you in terms of your own goals and the skills you want to learn and the knowledge you want to learn. For me, it rests a lot more on values and community and things like that, but that might not be everyone's priority. So just think about that and find the right mentor and person to work with. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Ali.
I might suggest that one other thing that can be useful, and the email addresses of virtually all our current grad students and lots of our former grad students you can find on people's personal pages. Talk to former students and current students of potential supervisors. That's a great place to get information.
Wonderful. I have a question that we discussed a little bit earlier. There's a lot. Almost all applicants required to contact a potential supervisor. Some of the questions that I receive is, what do I put on this email? Do you have any advice on how to write this email?
Well, I have some advice right on my lab's, my research group's website. So find that, and that's step one to make a good impression. If you follow the instructions on a faculty member's website, you're making a good first impression right off the bat. I think the things that are probably important if a potential supervisor doesn't include those specific instructions are the usual: a CV, a resume, and a transcript, and a few paragraphs or a paragraph or two that clearly articulates the fact that you've done a little homework on what your supervisor does in terms of research and how you could see yourself sort of fitting into that overall research program. I think that's a great first step. And professors are famous for liking a little ego massage here and there, so that never hurts either.
Great. Sanoji, would you like to add to it?
Oh, I think Craig covered it. Just don't send general emails that, like the dear Professor X, and you just copy paste the name, because we'll know that those are general emails. Just take the time to write, that one email to the person that you're interested in working with. Read a couple of their papers, go to their website, check out their LinkedIn, right? Check out their web pages, and be a little bit more knowledgeable. And just tell us, like, what is it that we can help you do, right? What are your next steps? And it's okay if you want to go to med school. It's okay if you want to go to industry, right? We are not going to penalize you for not wanting to be in academia. There's a lot of different venues that you can pursue after a master's or even a PhD, right? We just want to know, just be transparent and tell us what is it that we can do for you, and then we'll see if it's a good fit and we'll go from there.
Thank you. I just want to add another piece of question, because sometimes the students would come back, oh, I wrote to Dr. Willis or Dr. Wijenayake, being 4 days, they have not got back to me. And I tell them the professors are really busy. They have lots of classes, lots of research. So maybe give it 2 weeks. Is that a good time, or do you have any advice on how to follow up?
Always follow up. With me at least, you don't have to wait 2 weeks. Like if I haven't responded in a week, most likely got lost in my email or I'm doing some, animal work or something like that. So just follow up. It's not a bother at all. It shows that you're persistent and you're still interested. So yeah, don't be afraid to follow up.
Okay, wonderful. We have 2 minutes left in our webinar, and I think I asked almost all the questions that I have prepared. I think we also answered the Q&As. I want to ask if there are any last minute advice, insights that the panel would like to share.
Maybe I'll just add that, yeah, I think I always say to prospective students when they contact me that they won't hurt my feelings if they're talking to lots of different potential supervisors at other institutions too, right? I want to recruit students to my group that obviously have some skills and experience that I think are going to help them succeed. But I also run a group that's very team-based and collaborative. And so we want a good fit as well. So I want happy, productive people. So I think do your homework and don't just apply at one institution or don't just contact supervisors at one institution. Totally fine to be talking to folks at other places too and making sure you find a good fit for grad school.
Anyone else have anything to add?
I guess I could add one quick thing. I think this is something that I feel a lot of people going into their masters may not necessarily know what their future plans are. I know that definitely was the case for me. And it's okay to admit that to your supervisor. And that is also what's so great about this program too, is that there's so many people to talk to about what your future goals are. And I mean, the best people to talk to are your supervisors. And honestly, all of the supervisors here are super supportive and are so knowledgeable and will be able to direct you in the right direction.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Haley. We have come to the end of our webinar. So I really want to thank you to Craig, Sanoji, Ali, and Haley for being our great panel today and provide all this advice and insights and information about the master's and PhD programs and also how to be a successful applicant and a student. We will be sharing the recording and the PowerPoint. I will also make sure to add the link to our supervisor list that we have on the website in this follow-up email. So if you have any other questions about these programs, other graduate programs, please feel free to contact the Faculty of Graduate Studies office. For now, thanks everyone for joining and hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.